Well, greetings to you, my friend.
Good morning.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast known as No Expectations. My name's Andrew.
I'm Jen.
So we always talk about spirituality and yoga and Zen and all the things that make the world go round in the universe and interconnectedness of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just a few days away from Halloween.
Ooh.
How do you celebrate?
How do I celebrate?
Hold on, let me guess. Let's see. You turn on Bauhaus's Bela Lugosi's Dead
On loop
on
for
loop.
24 hours.
You get out your black eyeliner and mascara,
Yeah.
put that on,
Yeah.
and
Maybe a witch costume.
oh, witch costume?
Maybe.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
Oh
So,
yeah. There's definitely lots of Bauhaus being played
I bet.
this time of the year at my house. Yeah. I mean, with kids, like our we've already started the like candy.
Yeah. What kind of
fiasco.
candy are you giving out?
Um, Chocolate.
Mm. I thought you just get them. They come to the door and they're like, "What do you want, kids?" And they'd say, "I want whatever." And you're like, "What we got? We got apples."
You get what
No
you
expectations.
get. No.
That's what happens when they show up at my house.
Maybe we'll start that this year.
Yeah.
My kids would be so pissed. Like, the house of the apples.
Candy corn.
Yes, hell yeah.
Gross.
You're not. I am disappointed when I find out someone that I really respect does not like candy corn. I feel like it.
I just don't like sugar.
Yeah, fair.
So I can't when I see that stuff, it just looks like a pile of sugar, orange sugar.
Orange sugar.
So I'm definitely you lost me there. You lost me there.
Fair.
All right, so as Halloween comes on, we think about all of these kind of cringy things about Halloween, right? Like wearing masks or costumes or the dead.
Yeah,
or
Hallows Eve.
On Hallows Eve, and then the next day, All Saints Day, or whatever that is for you, how you celebrate. So, as I've been ruminating about the idea of death in our spiritual life over the last couple days. And I think as a culture that we struggle with the idea of death.
Yeah.
I think we feel like it's the end. And
to be feared, and to be feared.
Be feared, and then we struggle against it. And from a spiritual standpoint, we need to kind of not so much come to terms with death, but kind of wrap our arms around it and go, it is just another part of life. And that everything is born and dies. Right?
Yeah.
And so we can talk about it. So from a yogic standpoint, we talk about, each breath is the beginning of something new, and the end of that breath, that exhale, that's the end of that breath. And then we renew and we start again. And we start with, that very small level. And then if we're doing yoga asanas, we start in our place where we're connecting with our breath and we're finding our asana. And then we go through our movements, whatever they may be. And then we end in shavasana, which is corpse. And we make our way onto our side and we find ourselves reborn again, new.
Yeah.
So that process of birth and death throughout our daily life is quite common, but we don't seem to be that upset about it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the final exhalation, that we leave this spatial planar and we, to borrow the term from Ram Dass, we shed our skin suit. I love it. And we move on, and our soul or whatever it is, our connection to the universe is reconnected.
Yeah.
We find trauma in that, like from people on the outside or even ourselves.
Yeah.
So when we lose somebody, it's traumatic, like, oh, they've left us and I feel a hole in my life. Or those that are dying might feel that they need to hold on, fight against it. So there's this kind of attraction to life and aversion to death. So you kind of find yourself in this no man's land.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do?
I've lost complete control over.
Right. And what do I do? So, what are your thoughts about death in life?
Well, I go back to the way I was raised and my influence, the way that death was influenced on me was a thing to be afraid of. It was
Mm.
a thing to fear. And growing up in a um, very Southern Baptist Christian tradition, um, the hell, fire, and brimstone was a very real threat in
Mm-hmm.
my life. And I would spend so many nights down on my knees in prayer, asking for this God to save me from the trauma and the fear of hell.
Right.
And that was so ingrained into every decision I made and everything I did. Like, if you're not planning for your future death, you only have two choices when you die: it's heaven or hell. And that's all there is. And like it took me a long time, a lifetime of being an adult and experiences to recognize that trauma and that fear and death. Um, every time someone like someone that was elderly or there was a death in the family, the trauma would come back.
Right.
You can just feel it in your body of like, oh my God, are they going to heaven or hell? Like, did they do all the right things? And so until recently, until I started this part of my spiritual journey, um, death was scared the crap out of me. Um, I would say trauma. It was definitely a traumatic feeling of, um, have I have I done everything that I can to control what happens in that moment?
Yeah, and we know that we really don't have control, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But as humans, we're taught that we have to, like, we feel we have to have control over every.
and I think as in Western culture, we think of death as a failure sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're if we're not living, we're dying, and like death
Yeah.
is if you've given up and died for whatever reason, like that's it, you're and I think that's maybe probably due to some belief systems here, and also I think from a Western medicine thing, where like a doctor's like, I'm here to save you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're gonna do everything we can. We're gonna, we have the best technology in the
Yeah.
world, and and it's like, from a medical standpoint, death is almost like a failure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we couldn't save him, but we did
There's
everything we could.
Yeah.
It's just like the technology's not there yet, or like we couldn't get this in
Couldn't fight
time,
hard. Yeah.
and
You
so
didn't fight hard enough.
yeah, yeah, they gave
Or you
up.
lost your spirit.
So,
Yeah.
so if you're suffering from, a disease or old age, and you decide that enough's enough, that you want to give up, that's also failure too. This
Mm.
idea of like, hey, hold on just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Hold on for whom are you holding on?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's this kind of like disconnect in Western culture about um, death being failure or death being an enemy to life, and it's
Yeah.
not. It doesn't have to be. My personal experience with death has been pretty varied. As a young man, I was very sick, and my parents were told by my doctors that I wouldn't I wouldn't live to the age of 20. And at 4 or 5 years old, when I kind of heard that information from my parents, I didn't really understand what that meant
Yeah.
because I'm just a kid. And by the time you're like 20, you're like, oh well,
Dying now.
this
Yeah.
is but I
Expiring.
think it definitely influenced my perception of life.
Yeah.
Like even as a young man, it's like, okay, let's go do this, let's go experience that, let's go play with that, let's go see what that works like, because there was this kind of like, it seemed like a hard deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was a time, so obviously I made it 100 years after that.
120-year-old me and Drew still kicking.
Still rocking it. But then there was a time where I felt like death was hidden away from me as a man, as a Westerner. Like, and I don't know if that's your experience too, where the dead and the dying are like hidden away in rooms because we don't want to see them, because it's hard to we don't want to see that. We don't want to see someone die. So I
Mm.
remember like my grandmother passing away, and not being able to see her before she died, or other family members or relatives who died of old age,
Yeah.
and they were like, oh, we don't see them. And then and very common Western culture traditions. It's like we'll bury the body pretty quickly, we'll cremate the body, so you don't actually get to see it. So I was fortunate to, in my early 20s, to have quite a few friends that were from Taiwan, and one of their grandmothers passed away. And the grandma passed away, and they left grandma's body was brought back to the house.
Okay. Yeah.
Grandma's body stayed in the house in the guest
Mm.
room
Just hanging out.
for a very long period of time. and and I was like, man, this is crazy, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
bizarre, because my experience was, it was like, okay, we don't want to be around that. We don't want dead in the house. We want to put it in its place so that we can start our grieving process.
Yeah.
But grandma was in the house, and she was there for a number of weeks and go on with her daily business, whatever it was. So that was strange for me. And I think in Western culture, we don't want to look at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I know that's an extreme form
yeah.
of
Well, in addition,
exposure therapy.
no. I think in addition to that, we've become a capitalist society who they make money off of that whole like death.
I agree.
Yeah. So I mean, that's totally separate tangent. So yeah, I mean, like because my dad, when his father passed away, we're in the early 70s. It was the same thing. They the body and the visitation and everything was done inside their house in the
Right.
living room, and I think something just happened. And
Like, we don't feel comfortable around it anymore,
yeah.
right? We don't want that. And also of being around somebody who is dying, whether it be of old age or disease or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, wait, that's depressing, that's sad, I don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, and I was very fortunate as an older man to be in the room with my father as he was dying. But I always remember this kind of disconnect between reality, what was going on, and then the medical profession coming in. Like the doctors would come in and say, "Hey, you're doing real great. Da da da. Everything's gonna be, not really so much everything's gonna be fine, but you're doing great." And then they'd walk out of the room and they'd say to me, like, "Yeah, there's nothing we can do. There's
Yeah.
nothing more we can do." So I was like, why are we not just being honest with my father and just say, "Hey,
Yeah.
let's start this process."
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to spend some time with him and kind of in my own way help him find his way to the what I would call the great big change, or the great big
Mm-hmm.
transformation that goes on as he moves to the other side.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, you know, I talk about it in a blog post that's going to go up on the website here in a day or two, noexpectations.me, talking about like becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable thought of death, or the idea of death.
Yeah.
And in Hindu circles, they think about life in 4 stages. And the first stage is, you study, you acquire knowledge, you start to find your way into the world, and that goes up to about 25.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe 25 to 50, you start to earn your living. You create your money, you create your family, you do the things that you need to survive. You kind of build yourself up. The third stage is 50 to 75, where you kind of hand over the reins to the next generation. You start to do, you know, uh, ways of giving back into your community. Doing things that are altruistic, helping others.
Yeah.
And then the fourth stage, 75 until you expire, is the dying process,
Mm-hmm.
where you prepare yourself for the next thing. So you let go of your material things, you let go of concrete thinking and thought processes.
Yeah.
You sit down and self-study.
So, what does what's the response to like outside of that? Because in real life, like people are dying at a younger age, at a different age. They're not getting through all those stages. Is that where the fear, the like, I haven't made it to stage 4 where I can give back? And
I mean, it's a loose framework. It's not like, but I think it's the idea that, the majority of us go through this world in those kind of, there is like a life expectancy,
yeah.
right? And there's tragic death where, people leave this earth way too young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can find whatever way that, whatever meaning that is for you, being called back to the universe, you know, your work here is done, or however that is,
Yeah.
that they find your way back into universal consciousness. But I think as a general framework, Hindus think in that terms of like, these are phases of life. And if you're fortunate enough to make it to 75,
yeah,
like this is, or somewhere in the neighborhood, this is where you go, and this is how you think about it. And I not so much, we shouldn't get bogged down in the idea of the quadrants of it, but the idea that the dying process is kind of a thing. It's the phrase. It's like preparing yourself.
Yeah.
Like preparing yourself and getting ready for what's next. And that's a different process than what we think about here in Western culture, isn't it? Huh?
Yeah, it is. One of the ways that I have tried as a parent to prepare my children for death, whether it's an animal or a family member, you know, just experiencing death, is constantly dropping, you know, little nuggets that, hey, death, we shouldn't be afraid of it, that it will happen. And if you know, like we know our dog is aging and she's not going to be with us forever. But it's hard. It's hard to
certainly
prepare for something when all the other forces around you are telling you that it, you know, it's sad and it's something to be afraid of. And then things change and we don't like change. And now things, you know, will be different.
Does it, my experience was I learned a lot by death, and I've been I've had a lot of death experiences in my life.
Me too.
And some of those experiences take a while to kind of like make sense of and see like why this happened. And there's some that have just reinvigorated myself in my my joy for life. And the death of my father was a very important watershed moment in my life, where I kind of got to appreciate some things and like kind of just take some stock and go, okay, he's telling me something right here, and I've been fortunate enough to listen to what he says. Like in this moment, as he's leaving this earth, he's telling me stuff.
Yeah.
And I need to listen. I need to not be selfish and go, hold on, I need more of this. I need more of this. But be open to it, listen to it. And what it did for me in that moment was it thoroughly changed the trajectory of my life and the way I thought about things and the relationships that I keep and my service to this world.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know, we have that selfish thing where the dog dies, or you know, our beloved friend, and I've had plenty of those pass away too, and those kind of pillars in our life. We have to like, it helps us appreciate life.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to see it. So, you know, as your boys are young, can't hide away from it, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the thing too, as a young man. Like my parents would, like if the dog was getting old, they were like, oh, they take the dog
to the farm.
I was like, oh, can we go see the dog?
Not this farm.
Where's that? Oh, that farm's really far away. We don't have time to like. We can't get there. I'm like,
Like, you would try to, you know, prevent. Yeah, I mean, trying to. Here's the thing: death is uncomfortable and it's sad, and for the living, the people who remain, and sometimes it is, you know, very physically painful, and being able to acknowledge that you don't have to approach it with such fear and anguish, and like, yeah, you're gonna miss this. And when I think of death, I think of those of us who are remaining, the survivors after death has happened. You know, just acknowledging that it is a very natural and can be a beautiful part of life, if you take away, like you did, like the experience of being in it and doing something positive or good, or, you know, letting that death make you a little bit more better of a human.
Yeah, I think the spiritual journey that we're all on, and whatever methodology you use to find there. I think the big takeaway is, about integrating mindfulness into our daily lives. I think about it a lot is like the last thought I have on this, in this body, in this skin suit, I need it to be pure. I need it to be without anger, without resentment, without fear.
Yeah.
So that I can move on to whatever the next thing is with that good thought in my mind, whatever that is. So that mindfulness that we're working on cultivating every day, every moment, is important because we think about it as possibly the last thought we have. And I know that seems really heavy and like almost impossible, but when we create that lightness in ourselves, then it becomes simple.
Yeah.
Like, the guy that cut you off in traffic, or like, like thinking about things purely all the time, so that when it happens, it's okay. But also, we have to, when that moment arrives, we can't find ourselves clinging to life. And that sometimes is filled with regrets and what ifs, or this or that, or like, I really love that moment. That was beautiful. I really want to go back there. That moment's died. That moment's gone, but you can still have reverence for it, but you can never go back there, and then not fearing what's next. And that's where it's like being present all the time. That constant turning of the mindfulness within us gives us the ability to be present. And being present gives us that gift to go, I'm ready to accept whatever comes next.
I am not in control of the future. I don't have to hold on to the future.
And
pretty powerful to be able to.
It is. It takes work, but it's definitely possible. And then, when death presents itself to us, I think it's important to not look away, to appreciate it for what it is, and understanding and having relationships in our lives with other people, with animals, with ourselves, with nature, whatever that is. And then those things leave us. Those experiences make us more soulful people.
Yeah.
Sometimes have deeper connections to other people and other things and to ourselves. And that's pretty valuable. Yeah?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, well, you don't have to agree with it.
But I do.
Should we play some Bauhaus? Are you going to sing us out?
Undead, undead, undead.
That's all you know? Isn't that? I mean, if we were a higher quality podcast, we would be playing that right now. But I don't know we could pay the fee to Bauhaus.
Y'all, do me a favor and go listen to some Bauhaus. 'Tis the season.
That's unfortunate because I felt like they're more than just a seasonal Halloween band.
They are more, but like you just got to get into it. Not everyone.
I love Bauhaus. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I love Bauhaus, but I get it. I just want to read one.
Do they have a Christmas album? That would be cool. I'm gonna go look it up.
That'd be amazing. I'm gonna read. So when I was down in New Orleans last year, I was fortunate enough to pick up this very fantastic and possibly bizarre book.
We've talked about this book on the podcast a couple times.
Japanese death poems.
Death poems.
So Zen masters, there's quite a few of them that have already foreseen their demise. They know exact day, time when they're going to expire from this world. And so usually the standard is that right before you die, you scratch out a poem or your final thought, you take your 3 breaths, and then you move on. You shed the skin suit.
And this is a book of those last
words, last thoughts, haikus, etc. And I don't know if have we read this one before? I'll read it to you and you can tell me. Empty-handed, I entered the world. Barefoot, I leave it. My coming, my going, 2 simple happenings that got entangled.
I think we've read it before, but I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast. What a simple way to put your life. there's no, look at the career I achieved and the family I obtained and the friends I made and the places I traveled. It's, I'm leaving the same way I came in. And
Right. I think the empty-handed is interesting in the fact that it's kind of empty-handed. You show up with your your palms up. You're ready to accept what you're given,
mm-hmm.
um, and then you leave this world with nothing too, barefoot.
Yeah.
But that's experience of life travel, and as somebody who spends 99.9% of their time barefoot, this speaks to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mean to be jokey about it, but
The barefoot yogi.
yeah, my coming and my going, two simple happenings that got entangled. Um, I think that's pretty. I mean, it's really profound and
Yeah.
very simple, and very Japanese, very
Yeah.
just like matter of fact.
Matter
Like,
of fact.
these
But
things just happen.
yeah, but I also read a lot of grace and gratitude in that,
Mm-hmm.
and that not defined.
But you don't see any pushing or pulling there.
Yeah.
It's like just this. Okay, this happened, and it's gone.
It is what it is. One of your favorite quotes.
We'll go ahead and beep that out. That's like profanity to me.
It is what it is.
So, as you go into the Halloween season here and playing your Bauhaus, running around in your skin suit or your skeleton costume.
Please put something on over your skin suits for all Hallows Eve.
Yeah, I know. I'll have a shirt on.
And then, no shoes.
No shoes. Guaranteed no shoes.
Not going to your door trick or treat.
Take a moment to think about your relationship with the idea of the ending, and see if you can come to terms with it a little bit more, and not turn away from it. Doesn't mean you have to be fixated with it. You just need to be aware of it. Find your okayness with it.
Yeah.
And don't let it be the only driving force in your life as a fear.
Fear, yeah.
And maybe take some time to just prepare yourself for it whenever it comes. See what happens.
All right.
No expectations. That's all Jen's got today.
That's all I got.
It's all right.